folks. Welcome back to our web series. This is Marketing with DysChick. And once again, I'm joined by the amazing Mikelah Rose. Say hello to the good people, them.
Hello, Deanna, and the people them. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. I love it that we can just keep coming back with all these different areas of marketing because we both have had so much experience in our corporate careers as well as in our personal lives and launching brands ourselves with marketing. And I am excited to share it with the massive depth.
People them.
The people them they need this information. And in this episode of the series, we are talking about cause marketing, something that I don't think people are too familiar with, or it's not top of mind for them. But we are going to get into what that means and how we're seeing that shift as we have newer generations coming into this space. So let's get into it.
Make we do it. All right. Um, so when you think of cause marketing, what do you think of?
Yeah, so I think of when people are, donating or shopping with brands that are affiliated with a cause that they care about. I know Standard and Poor's has their index that's like ESG, their environmental, social justice, and governance. So we're seeing how people are investing based on the causes that they care about, how people are shopping with brands. We're seeing it, of course, right now with shopping with brands that support or do not support DEI initiatives. And so to me, cause marketing is really how do you tap into a user base by leveraging a cause that your brand is associated with?
Hmm.
You
For
tell me
sure.
because you have way more
No,
experience
no,
in
no.
cause
Honestly,
marketing.
I think your definition of it is spot on, but it's also taking into account um causes that a lot of nonprofits and causes that have to deal with challenges that are also aligned to the brand,
Mhm.
but are important to the masses. And by masses, I mean just people that it's impacted. So I think for a really long time that was cancer. You
Mhm.
know, we see St. Jude, we see breast cancer awareness, a lot of medical things because it really translate, I think the healthcare in the country is just really expensive, and so the cost, alleviating the cost of things like um healthcare and kids in need and water supply and things like that have always kind of been a part of what we really knew as, a lot of religious organizations took part in, or churches are affiliated with those types of nonprofits to get people to donate money to do that. So donating money to help one another. But I think in the last 10 years or so, probably if not more, we've seen the rise of using of big brands and corporations tying themselves to particular causes, year over year, um, and using it in their marketing. So I reference like St. Jude. You'll go to, I remember when I was working at a fashion brand, we had a donation to St. Jude every year during Christmas. And we had done that. It wasn't my first year. They had done it in previous years. But as every year went on, I went into every single retail store and I saw the same donation request for the same organization. And so I started thinking, I'm like, well, if everybody's donating to the same organization, is that not going to trigger like, well, I donated at this store, I don't need to donate at another store? And then it kind of causes this psychological thing with donating
Yeah.
as a whole. And then I think you hear things of connections with like big organizations like Boys and Girls Club or Red Cross, but we've also seen how big those corporations, just because they're nonprofit, they don't always reach the masses,
Yeah.
and it gets covered in in like administrative costs versus actually reaching the people. So consumers are donating with hopes of helping individuals when a lot of that money tends to get tied to the overhead. And so as Tik, not TikTok, I would say Instagram, but maybe TikTok in particular, there's been a level of transparency that people are really following the trail of transparency, particularly among Gen Z. And so there has been this movement around why people are donating, the idea of even like greenwashing sustainability efforts and stuff like that. And so everyone is really cognizant about who and how they're donating to, and they donate with expectations,
Hmm.
or they support brands with particular expectations that those brands will deliver on their promise to help said organization that they are, or cause that they are particularly aligned to. We saw that amplified during COVID with the case with George Floyd, in particularly, impacting, us as Black women in corporate. We saw a lot of initiatives, Black squares,
Hmm.
and a lot of corporations really having an interest in supporting the community, very similar to how they have done in the past. Let's donate in order to kind of alleviate. I don't know necessarily that that's what the protests and the movement was really asking for. However,
Isn't
when
that
you
funny
take
how
up
that
a
always gets missed?
I don't think that, but it is a way to, for me, I see it as a way to, I I remember in particular somewhat, I was working at a global company at the time, and someone's like, why aren't we doing Black squares today? And I'm like, no. I was like, absolutely not. This is not the opportunity for us to be putting in Black squares. We are doing nothing from an equity standpoint. This is the time to stay silent and just sit this one out. Unless we are actually coming with a plan,
Hmm.
we should not be doing anything. And I ended up being right, because a lot of companies put up their Black squares and had nothing else to give.
Hmm.
And
Or they
so,
missed the mark. I know there was, I think it was during around the same time where Hulu like pulled an episode of the Golden Girls because they were like, well, they're wearing blackface. And people were like, nobody asked you for this.
that's not
We've
what we
never
asked
had a
for.
problem with
Yeah,
Golden Girls.
yeah, yeah. And I think diversity, equity, inclusion has recently come under fire. So a lot of organizations that really started, so cause marketing isn't new. We just talked about,
Yeah.
from churches and donating to personal donations to corporations sitting in to kind of do the particular causes, to now we get to the DEI space and the challenge that
Mhm.
is happening currently within cause marketing and doing good. So I think there has been a lot of educating and re-educating the masses on what diversity, equity, inclusion really means. And I think for a long time, people really thought that that was equivalent to assisting Black audiences, and that has not been the sole case. I'm not saying that it isn't the case, um, but it is not the sole case. It helps women, it helps veterans, it allows for equity across the board among different ethnicities,
Yes.
backgrounds, professionally, whatever, ageism, all
Hmm.
of that. That's what it really covers. It just means we need to be giving equal opportunity to be considered,
Hmm.
not walked in the door. So all of the brands that came in through a DEI program into whatever it is however it is they came into funding, it doesn't mean that they weren't qualified. And I think that those are the two misconceptions: is that it's Black and unqualified, and I
Hmm.
don't think that that is really I think it's purposefully ignored.
Yes.
And so what I think is going to be a byproduct, and I did a TikTok post and you had reached out to me when I did that, like what is going to happen to cause marketing? Because it's not just companies walking away from Black entrepreneurial companies. It really begs to question the reason for companies getting involved in donating to nonprofits in the first place.
Hmm.
And I think we have to be mindful as marketers what that message really is and how we want to follow up. So the initial excitement and action has happened, but now what? And a lot of times I think corporations and marketing teams aren't thinking about the now what, they're just thinking about the now.
Hmm.
And so what does that really truly mean? So before, I think companies have to be extremely mindful before we take up a particular cause that we want to donate to. What is going to be our cause of action, if any?
Hmm.
And if it's not a resounding yes, then maybe it should just be a no, we should just sit this one out, because it could end up costing you your brand visibility, your brand equity in the long run, because you're not delivering on
Right.
the promise that you made publicly. And we're starting to see a lot of that backlash with retailers and brands, and it's kind of causing this kind of chaos. But what I don't think people are talking about is how the mindset of consumers who find cause marketing important to the brands that they consume, how is that going to brands are going to come into question, and consumers are going to think twice,
Hmm.
particularly Gen Z, about the brands that they support, because they are now going back on their word. And if they're not being trustworthy in the marketing, how can they be trustworthy in this product? And how can they be trustworthy to really targeting my audience with genuineness? And they're the audience that cares the most, to be
Right.
completely transparent. Because, I think older generations, they kind of have their brands and they're going to buy them regardless. But they're the ones who have the pick, choose, and refuse.
Hmm.
And so I think we're not really at the precipice of seeing the impact of that, and it probably will get glazed over, and they're like, no, it's got to be something else why they don't like our brand.
Mm.
But I don't think that that's the case.
Of
You
course
might want to
not.
consider it.
Well, you also want to look into, you think about consumers in general, right? Is this something that you buy when you have disposable income? And we know a lot of Gen Z does not really have disposable income the same way previous generations have. They're talking about the housing crisis and not being able to buy homes, and, their futures are looking different for them. So the way that they spend their money is actually really important to them because it says something now about the brands that they support. It says something about their character and their choices and how could you support that brand. And of course, we have cancel culture, which is like you do one thing wrong as a brand and that's the end of that. People will not, support you. You have to do so much
Mm-hmm.
work to win them back because it's going to go viral.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
see it often where a brand does something, a retailer does something, and people are like, "Oh, we're boycotting. We're done. We're not buying that. We're not." Even if there are brands on those shelves that we love and we trust, we're not going to that store because we don't want to be associated with that type of rhetoric or that movement.
I
So I
also
do
think it's
think
going
that
to,
brands
yeah.
need to be really careful about the way that they're crafting their messages and, like you said, delivering on those promises for their causes.
I also think it's going to impact the organic sharing of love, right? So I think if we use Target as an example, the idea of a Target run and how much people love Target, the display, like the all of the free content that they got, a
Hmm.
lot of that might go away. Like that buzz that they had about being this shopping experience, that also might go away. And I
Yeah,
think that's what I meant by
it's happening.
it's happening, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that people aren't shopping there, but the darlingness that they had is definitely going to shift because
Hmm.
one, they're like, well, I'm gonna shop this brand, but I don't necessarily need to be posting about it. I don't have the same
Yeah.
affinity to like want to face the scrutiny
Hmm.
of what might come. That's the other thing. Cause I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the thing that we also that brands I think also have to think about is public perception and
Hmm.
how hard is it going to be to get back that audience to a place where they really really love and engage. And I think
And they're
sometimes
not
they
ashamed to
and
support.
they're
I
not
mean,
ashamed
in
to
real life,
publicly get, people
yeah.
on board again. I think
In real life,
that's the
those Target
cleanup.
bags are actually really visible. They give out these really like very strong tote bags. And I've seen
Mhm.
people turn them inside out so that you just don't know that they're using a Target bag. Like they're doing it in real life. They don't want to be associated with Target, even if that is someplace that they shop. They don't want you to know.
That is interesting. I do have a
Don't we
bags
all?
myself.
Don't we all? But now people are turning them
Yeah.
inside out. Like, I don't want you
Yeah.
to know that this is a Target bag. So even
Yeah.
in real life on the
Yes.
streets, people
That
are
that
like, I
that's
don't want you
yeah,
to
that's
see this.
organic, visibility that they're
Yeah.
they're no longer getting. So to that point is the public perception takes a while to really change. And one bad thing is just like it takes
Hmm.
it and twists it into a whole new
Yeah.
um challenge for them.
Yeah, especially since right now people don't even need to deep dive into what you actually did wrong. Like they don't need to see, saying something like we're rolling back DEI. Does that mean that you are canceling all of these programs? Does that mean that you kind of overdid, in 2020 as a lot of brands did, and now you're trying to pull back on that either because of cost or partnerships or whatever it is. We're not speaking about Target in particular, but just in general people don't even need to know what you did. The perception of you did bad is
Hmm.
enough for them to not want to be associated with your brand.
Yeah. And I think for brands, their transparency to the public is going to be key
Hmm.
in whatever transition that they make away from whatever cause that they are stepping into or stepping away from. Why is it important? Like if you think about brands like Patagonia, like they donate that, like that has been Ben and Jerry's. That's been the ethos of the brand since inception. And so that's very, very different than a established brand who just happens to go into this particular thing. And a lot of times, what I think people don't see behind the scenes is when leadership changes, those causes can change too.
Hmm.
Those priorities change too. So the if the investment is only based upon leadership input, it's not going to be sustainable
Mm-mm.
because it's not the value system of the company. And in order to really do cause marketing right, it has to be within the value. Ben and Jerry's is like a perfect example.
Yes.
Like they're always at the forefront of different social justice
Hmm.
issues. And
Getting
they're
arrested
not,
themselves.
yeah, like that's just been part of who they are. And so if you work with the company, if you buy from the company, if you supply their products, like this, and you either get on board or you move out of the way. And
Hmm.
I think those brands are more respected than a space. So it's either you get out and stay out, or you double down and say it with your chest.
Hmm.
The in betweens are just going to be flip flopping all over the place. They're not going to know what to do. Someone to lean here, someone to lean to the other side, and it kind of causes brand chaos in the space because they can't align to what they want to do.
Yeah, I think having consistent marketing in general needs to be consistent because you are saying this is what the brand is, these are the brand values, this is the mission. But when you're talking about causes that you align to or that your company supports or that, you ask people to donate at a particular time, maybe it's around the holidays to the Salvation Army, it has to be consistent so that people feel like this is part of your core value. If you
Mm-hmm.
keep changing that, then one, it's hard on marketers, been there. But it's also really hard for the public perception. They're like, okay, things can seem performative, like you're just pretending to be interested in this cause, and next year you're going to change to something else. And so I don't think, especially at the senior level, I don't think that people in brand spaces, corporations understand this, that this newer generation, and I can't even just say it's Gen Z, many of us are just more socially aware. We're online more. The whole reason Black Lives Matter did so well was because people were forced to pay attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think not being consistent makes it seem like any of your efforts are performative, and you lose trust with your consumer
Mm-hmm.
base because they don't know if you actually do align to their values or not. So it's difficult to support you. Like you said, if you're going to be all in, then you need to be all in. If you're all out, just stay out. That way I don't have to associate you with anything.
Exactly. Keep it clean.
Keep it clean.
Keep
Make
it
it
cute.
easy.
Yes. Yes.
Make it easier for
Have
all.
you seen, like, what are your thoughts on like consumption? I haven't seen a whole lot yet, but I'm curious as to your thoughts as to how this may, like, a lot of these decisions may impact consumers in the sense of, are do you see people kind of changing their perspective?
I do, but I also feel like right now, especially right now when, it's February 2025, people are in survival mode for a lot of things. So they're going to
Mm-hmm.
buy things at this point regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that brands need to be aware that you're no longer the only player in a space. Right? So if you are the supplier of my toothpaste, but then your CEO comes out and says something that is offensive to me, I'm buying different toothpaste.
Yeah.
Like I'm just moving on. And I've seen people do that where they're supporting smaller brands because it just seems easier to
Mm-hmm.
get behind them,
Yeah.
or they're not as brand loyal as they used to be. Right? I used to use
There
the
we go. There we go.
It's so true. They're just not. I used to always, when people would say, your marketing style, tactics, whatever, and I would use the idea of toilet paper. Like people get very loyal to their particular toilet paper brand
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, cost savings, comfort, the language of the marketing, whatever it is. Right now, you're seeing people just shifting, and now this one is recycled, this one's not recycled, this one's better for your plumbing, this one's just cheaper, just cheaper in
Mm-hmm.
general.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're seeing the same kind of brand loyalty. So I do think
Yes.
corporations need to be careful that they could really
Yes.
lose their consumer base with one false step. You really
Yep.
could lose a significant market share with one
I
false step.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's not the same as it was before. You're not
It
taking your
sure
car into
isn't. You're
service all
fighting
the
for that
time.
loyalty, right? You're fighting
For
for that
real.
loyalty. So
For
we'll
real.
see, I guess. I think what's interesting is that this is a space that is going to continue for a lot of people to play in, but it's also like if we spend 90% of our budget on this, we're going to spend 10% on this nonprofit. So because it's that small investment, but it could have such a big
Mhm.
impact on the total business. I think we're going to see a lot of shifts this year in particular, and going forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think brands just need to really keep their ear to the ground. They need to
Yeah.
understand what does their consumer base care about. It's no
Mm-hmm.
longer, at car companies, they have different types of vehicles. This is the family vehicle. This is the sports car. This is whatever it is. You really have to pay attention to what your consumers care about and make sure that you are reflecting that because
Yeah.
once they stop seeing themselves in your brand, they will move on. It's not the same as it used to be. They definitely will move on. People
Yeah.
are changing toilet paper.
Listen, I hear you.
I'm saying. But we are always loyal to our fans, our consumer base,
Yes.
the people who view our videos
Yes.
and listen
Yes.
to our voices. And we want to
Yes.
make sure that we are tackling topics that you guys care about, that you want to understand different areas of marketing, and we are breaking it down in the simplest terms. So if you have questions or you want to see us cover a different topic, please drop a comment, let us know. But until then, Michaela, let them know where they can reach you because if they have questions, I don't want them all coming to me.
You guys can reach me at MikelahRose.com, Michaela K Rose on social platforms. And then Deanna, how can the people then reach you?
Oh, of course, they can always check out DysChick, DysChick. Subscribe to my newsletter. I always have content in there about different topics going on with current events, but also I will be dropping some marketing tips for those of you who are interested. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll put all of this into the description so you don't have to write it down right now.
Okay.
Make sure you follow us, connect with us, and again, let us know what you want to hear from us. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.